An urban legend, urban myth, urban tale, or contemporary legend is a form of modern folklore consisting of stories that may or may not have been believed by their tellers to be true. As with all folklore and mythology, become a commonly used term when recounting this type of story. Some urban legends have passed through the years with only minor changes to suit regional variations. Here is one of the urban legends: the Bandage Man of Cannon Beach. Far from the rooted in history scares of Portland's Shanghai tunnels, the Bandage Man haunts a lonely patch of decommissioned highway near the idyllic coast town of Cannon Beach. Like many slightly pervy ghosts, he likes to mess with randy teenagers making out in their cars, though more sinister legends have him eating dogs, wandering the wind-swept roadside, and even jumping in the back of pickups and sedans, filling the car with the scent of rotting flesh. The Bandage Man, most popularly a logger hacked up at the nearby mill, made his earliest documented appearance in the 50s, and he was likely a spook. The Bandage Man first made an appearance in the 1950s. He's said to be the mummy of a logger that was hacked up in a sawmill accident, wrapped completely in bloody bandages and smells of rotting flesh. He's said to haunt a stretch of Highway 101, between the Highway 26 junction to the north entrance of Cannon Beach, and sometimes even as far down as Arch Cape. I also heard that he was an injured fireman, electrician, and the list goes on. What stays consistent in the story is the bandages. Like most folklore, the Bandage Man mostly targets teens in parked cars. On occasion, he is said to target moving vehicles like open-top cars or pickup truck. He'll jump into the back of the vehicle and then mysteriously vanishes before reaching town. Most of the time people do not become aware of his presence until his rotting stench reaches your nose. The Bandage Man feeds on dogs and small animals, and occasionally the unlucky person. In the 1960s, pranks and tales of the Bandage Man were commonplace, but these days, most people haven't heard this local urban legend. One source told me that the story was told to frighten tourists, but who is to say? It's definitely taken a life of its own online. Back in the day, I slung some booze at ye old driftwood. On some dark dreary nights, we would share stories. Some are the usual rants, but some were on the spookier side. I first heard the story of the Lady of Cannon Beach in 2005 from a local landscaper. Her tale is as follows. It was around 11 p.m. on a warm night in the fall, maybe September. The landscaper was walking to her home on Adams, I think, or maybe Washington. She was on Spruce by Harrison Street when she noticed a glowing white figure. The white figure appeared to be in a white dress and was gliding, not walking. She said the woman or apparition had no face, or at least a dark hole in place of the face. My response, of course, was, "And how drunk were you?" She swore she hadn't been, but I dismissed the story as a hyped-up drunken tale of late-night adventures. The story began to bother me though, so I asked a long-time local about it. He said, "Oh, that's the Lady of Cannon Beaches, if I should have heard of her." He said that she'd been seen around Cannon Beach and the Presidential Streets since the 1980s or maybe earlier. No one knew where she came from, only that she would appear all in white gliding around one street or the other. The Tillamook Rock Lighthouse was a beacon for the Oregon coast from 1881 until 1957. During that time the lighthouse was manned by just a few men, no more than 5 at a time. Secluded, dark, and lonely, being stationed at the Tillamook Rock Lighthouse was only for the hardy. Located between the towns of Seaside and Cannon Beach, it was an important part of navigation to and from the Columbia River. In the 1930s the U.S. Coast Guard took over management of the lighthouse and brought with them younger cadets to keep up good old terrible Tilly. It was one such young man that told tale of a rather harrowing event during his first night on the Rock. Keeper James Gibbs was feeling alone, and maybe a bit in over his head. The other keepers didn't seem too keen on the new recruit. His imagination went wild with ideas that his fellow keepers might be escaped convicts, or even psychopathic murderers. He was shown to his bunk, which was more of a cell by his telling. In the night and in the dark, Gibbs heard a shuffling noise. Not in the hall, but in his room. Shh, shh. The noise came and went. It was a killer, a knife glinting in the darkness. In a new place, after traveling, Gibbs wasn't in his element. The shuffling noise continued until finally Gibbs felt something brush his face. He heard tale of a ghost, a spirit haunting the rooms of the lighthouse, and here it was. Gibbs lashed out, coming in contact with whatever it was, knocking it away. He reached for the lamp by his bedside, but instead of a bloody spirit or a knife-wielding maniac, he discovered a goose with an injured wing. The conclusion was that it must have flown in through the open window. Another tale from keepers of the Tillamook rock lighthouse. It must have been tough to be so secluded out at the lighthouse. It lies over a mile offshore, and it can be tough getting to and from the lighthouse even during the best weather. Can you imagine a rather stormy night, or even a foggy one, a ship cruising out of the fog, yelling and screaming for your life to turn it away, and then it just disappears? The ship was reported to be so real that the keepers could hear the sailors yelling out into the night. The sails torn and fluttering, even if there was no wind. Many think that this ship is the ghost of the crew of the Lupata or Lupatia that wrecked right by the rock just before construction of the lighthouse was completed. The entire crew of the British ship Lupata were lost, with the exception of one of the crew members' dog. The Bandage Man is a phantom of a man completely wrapped in bandages that haunts this small community. The bloody figure, who smells of rotting flesh, jumps into vehicles passing on a road outside of town, notably pickup trucks or open-topped cars, but also sedans, station wagons, and even sports cars. Sometimes the mummy breaks windows, or leaves behind bits of bloody or foul-smelling bandages. One legend has it that he's the ghost of a dead logger cut to pieces in a sawmill accident. The Bandage Man, sometimes blamed on a logger that was maimed at the nearby mill, made his earliest documented appearance in the 50s. He was likely a spooky story-teller, around beach bonfires by teens weaned on monster movies, thus the silly mummy-like roots. Still, after hearing that tale late at night, then retiring to the confines of a secluded road for a little third-base action, it's a story that carries enough creepy weight to seriously kill the mood, which is why it's persisted for decades.